Okay, folks. So thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I really am enjoying this live video. By my count, there are about 240 of y'all here. So thank you very much for that. The questions that I want to answer for you guys are the ones that you submitted earlier to my question, and that is there's 5 of them here. The first is for folks who are 60 and older in SHTF, how do we focus? And I'm actually going to apply that not only to people who get the AARP magazine, but also folks in general. I think some major areas to focus on. Number 2 is thyroid issues, and what do we do about hypothyroid and poop hits the fan when we have a short supply or when we're running out of them. Number 3, what made me start prepping? And that's going to be fun. That'll be a great one to answer for you guys. 4, how will medicine change in the future, in the third iteration of whatever healthcare, government healthcare overhaul we can expect? What will that look like in the future? The 5th is, what's the deal with stitching wounds and stapling wounds? And then actually I have a bonus one in here, but you guys will have to stay tuned to till the end. Post-Trump, we elected the Donald. Now what? Now what can we expect? Ooh, so that's where we're going for the next little bit. First things first. Our first question came today from Stephen Ramsey. So thank you, Stephen, very much. All right. Sophie from New Zealand. Awesome. And then Laura from Green Bay. How exciting. That's great. Thank you guys so much for being here. Our first question from Stephen Ramsey. So I'm 60 plus. Actually, I'll read his question just so I can do the man justice because it was well done. Okay. Stephen Ramsey asks, over the age of 60 in SHTF, pretty much everything out there from prepping to firearms training seems to assume youth, vigor, and ideal health. I can assure you no trainer, in quotes, trainer, these days is going to get me to crawl in the dirt or run very far very quickly, even as an ex-infantryman. Thank you for that. Familiar with such things, my rifle, etc. Avoid become diabetic because it was like a gunshot wound. And as well as any other chronic age-related diseases. But age itself will not be stopped, and I'm sick of prepping experts basically writing me off as a casualty by violence or untreated medicated illness. All right, so the question, I believe, if I'm understanding Stephen correctly here, is, all right, so I'm 60 plus, I'm a pensioner, as the British would call it. I'm of retiring age. What are my areas of focus? What do I have relevance? Is it worth prepping? Yes, definitely. And what areas should I focus on? Okay. So the first duty of every intelligent man is to state the obvious, right? So first, let's define here some of the expectations, some of the parameters for people who are of retirement age, and honestly, not just limited to this. Even if you're not of a retirement age, you probably have friends, family, neighbors, etc., who maybe are. And sorry, I'm working on a headache and issues. You probably got friends and family who are, and we need to take care of them too. But also we need to equip each member of our group or of our team or whatever to be in the best health possible during poop hits the fan times. So what are the expectations here? What are the parameters? Part 1. In general, as people age, as they get older, their health isn't, of course, in their 60s what it was in their 20s and 30s. Their muscle capacity isn't what it was usually. Of course, you got the exceptions to the rule, the guys who are like, yeah, I'm isogenics or whatever genics it is of the week, who are these marathoners or whatnot. But in general, people don't tend to maintain the level of physical health and physical capability as they get older. One of the things that you see often on the news is during times of, for instance, like a blizzard, you see reports on the news of, hey, so-and-so got whisked off to the hospital. We've had an increase in calls for emergency 911 or for first responders because of people shoveling too much snow and getting heart attacks. I think that it bears understanding that in a long-term grid down or a poop hits the fan scenario, in order to meet your activities of daily living, you are going to see an increase in manual labor required. And as a consequence of an increase in manual labor, especially a sudden increase in manual labor, You see people who are, for instance, chopping wood, very physical task, carrying heavy buckets full of water, for instance. These are very physical tasks. You see that if they have any, for instance, pre-existing heart conditions, or they're dealing with high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, like this tends to be the thing that gets people, like number one. And we do see an increase, a corollary. The older you get, the more likely you are, for various different reasons, to run into issues with high blood pressure or heart disease of some sort. Paying attention to your cardiovascular health, if you are a pensioner, I love that term from the British, a pensioner. If you're a pensioner or a person of retirement age, paying attention to your cardiovascular health is so important. And it is not a comfortable thing. People do not want to hear it. And I get that. People are like, oh, I don't want to hear to go out to the gym, Patriot Nurse. Listen, like, I get it. I get it. The majority of my life being physically fit has not come easy for me. Okay. I understand in many ways the challenges of getting to the gym or doing something physically. Okay. But even if, for instance, if you're wheelchair bound or you have mobility issues, you can pick up a couple of weeny little 2.5 pound dumbbells and just lift them up over your head a few times. Those are little things that you can do and then work your way up. If you don't have use of your legs, for instance, there's a lot of gyms, and there's also machines. If you don't have a gym, they are an arm cycle, and you can get yourself almost into a good cardio range. It's harder, but you can get yourself up there, get your heart rate up with an arm cycle, even if you don't have the ability to move your legs. So cardiovascular health is part one. But with that comes also the knowledge that we need to focus on core strength and mobility issues as well. There are 3 things. Remember this, remember this, remember this, remember this. If you are in nursing school or you have someone who's older, you've got to remember these 3 things. The 3 things that put people in nursing homes: falls, incontinence, and dementia. Say it with me, y'all. Falls, incontinence, and dementia. If you can avoid those 3 areas, all right, like spend those years in your 60 plus years avoiding those areas and doing whatever it is you need to do to avoid those areas, you're going to be able to do things for yourself. Being self-sufficient, being able to perform your activities of daily living long into your 80s, 90s, and even your hundreds, way to go. That's the thing to focus on. Core strength and gait management, mobility management are a part of that as well. Core strength, we as Americans in general are kind of lax on that. And we don't go through our full range of motion when we go to the potty. Don't know if you guys saw that, but I did a video. Let's see here. What was it? Oh, it was the power of your poo, why your turds matter. Oh, I love that video. It was great. It was the squatty potty one. Going through full range of motion with your hips and having a good fluid range of motion with your hips, that will serve you and pay dividends if you can invest in that. Something also to consider, and I have had many students come to my classes telling me the following point. I know that I'm old. I know that I'm slow. I'm not going to be able to, run out and, light myself on fire and jump out of a building, or, jump up on top of a car and, lay down suppressive fire, like all this stuff, the high speed operator stuff. I know that thank you, Adam Lindsay. I appreciate that. He said, this is great, ma'am. Thank you. I appreciate that. Y'all are just awesome. A lot of my students, when they come to class, will say, listen, I know that I'm not physically capable to do certain things, but I've got a good working mind. And I have an aptitude and interest in medicine and in biology. I get these sort of things. I get that, a heart gets blood supply to the tissues. Find out what it is that you are good at and that you have an aptitude for, and then go that way, man. Like, take the parable of the talents, man. Whatever God gives you, whatever aptitudes that you have, like, take that and invest it, man. And for a lot of folks, pursuing medical understanding, medical knowledge, medical training will really be a helpful, it will really be a helpful way to go about your preparedness. Now, I'm a huge fan. Don't misunderstand me, y'all. There's a rifle next to me for a reason. I'm a huge fan of self-defense, and I'm a huge fan of firearms training in general. But for some people, like, they want to start one place or another, definitely invest in medical training, because regardless of how high speed of an operator you are or not, if your brain works, you can do medicine. Okay. Even if your hands don't work, you can tell somebody, hey, clean your hands real good. Now peel back that bandage. Let me look at that. Whoa, that wound doesn't look quite right. What are the measurements on that wound? Okay, it's bigger than it was 2 days ago. That's not good. What type of fluid is draining out of that wound? Okay, write that down. Do you see? Like, it's problem solving. It's thinking. Your mind, if your mind is good, like, you can do so much, you can do so many good and helpful things for your group, right? Play to your strengths, medicine. Yeah. So really that advice as far as what to do for people 60 and older in prepping is broadly applicable to many different age ranges and categories. I will tell you this. Papaw and Mamaw, my grandparents, I filmed a couple videos with them. Papaw, I think I filmed with him the Great Depression survival stories. And yay, thank you, Stacy Taylor. I appreciate that. Woohoo. Stacy says she's enjoying it. I filmed a couple videos with Papaw and Mamaw. And in Papaw's Great Depression survival stories, I mean, my Papaw's in his 80s. He just turned, I think, well, I don't want to say that because Papaw may be watching me. Would you like some tea? Papaw is in his 80s. And Papaw, of course, lived through the Great Depression, was raised by an older family member. I'm desperately trying not to tip that tea over and like electrocute myself, God forbid. Papaw, as an older person, okay, is such a wealth of knowledge. Our older people, and I'm talking people like in their 80s, 90s, people who, for instance, may have significant mobility challenges. They, especially when it comes to remembering their youth, oftentimes, even if they're having difficulties being lucid, they will have a much clearer memory of their youth and things from their youth and, for instance, even things now and currently happening with them. This is a major asset for you, okay? To have someone older in your group. Not only are they going to have wisdom, but they've been around the block a few times and they probably remember things and they've seen things before and they can recall to mind, hey, I remember when, oh, here's a classic one. I remember when diphtheria was going around, or I remember when we had measles. That's a great one right there, because measles nowadays, from the mid 80s onwards, we vaccinated people for it and we didn't see it. We didn't have the cultural familiarity and the experience with seeing measles, like our grandparents did. And P.S. for the vast majority of cases for, children catching measles, it's not catastrophic. Okay. I mean, you're going to have some people with significant complications, but just as a teaching point, our elders remember these diseases from old and they remember what the treatments were. And they remember what were the old school ways of dealing with them. So that's something I would definitely recommend. Acknowledge the wisdom of your elders. And I believe there's a proverb. I think it's in Proverbs somewhere. It's to stand in the presence of an elder of your people. That actually may be in the Torah. It may be in Deuteronomy. I'm trying to remember. As a little sub rabbit trail, if you ever watch, like when a rabbi comes into a room, if he's teaching at a yeshiva, all of the students stand. Like, it's quiet. They stand because of that commandment. You stand in the presence of an elder, which, recognizing that and lifting up our elders and honoring their experiences, we've lost that as in general, as a culture. We definitely don't have that like we used to. And I think that we would be served greatly by embracing that afresh. That's part one. Y'all having a good time? I'm having a great time. Dorothy, as an elder, I am loving this. Awesome. Doug Davis, exactly. Listen to older people. Much can be learned if you aren't so arrogant. Yeah. Humility. Humility's a challenge. Teresa's having a great time. Anne-Marie's like, yeah, baby. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you guys are having a great time. Let's go up to the second point here. Thyroid issues. This question comes from Melissa Kingsbury. And Melissa had the question, okay, for folks who have hypothyroid issues, basically, what hypothyroid is, let's define our terms here. Your thyroid is like right here. If you lift your neck up here and you put your hands right here on the side of your neck, you can swallow and you'll feel your thyroid go, woo, it'll move just a little bit, okay? The thyroid is responsible for a lot of maintenance of basic metabolic processes in the body and regulation of those processes. What happens when the thyroid is either weakened or damaged for one reason or another, the body ceases to be able to maintain that regulation of those basic metabolic processes. Okay. And this is more than just cosmetic. This can be pretty significantly catastrophic, especially if left unregulated for a long period of time. People can they can lose hair. They can have slow metabolism. I'm thinking here of hyperthyroid with exophthalmos, when their eyes are like woo, popping out of their head. With people with hypothyroid, they tend to gain weight. They tend to have pretty significant fatigue and energy loss. And when we're thinking about a long-term grid down, that losing manpower is a critical issue. Because let's say, for instance, in the case of someone with hypothyroid, let's say that when they have their medication, they're able to function, they're able to have a decent energy level, and they are one of, let's say, 4 people guarding a house, for instance, and you're rotating security duty, okay? And you're getting job fatigue after about 4 hours of doing something that requires pretty significant and intense concentration. You got somebody whose mental processes are slower, who's physically fatigued. That's going to be not a good thing. So paying attention to this is important. Typically, nowadays, thyroid issues are treated with a drug called levothyroxine, which is the generic, and then the brand name is Synthroid, okay? Prescribed by a doctor, etc. If, for instance, we're in a long-term grid going down scenario, you're starting to see how this could be an issue because the supply line gets depleted. And with that supply line goes your access to drugs, of course. In a long-term grid down, what's probably going to happen is people are going to have to go back to the old school ways. And the old school ways that we used to treat hypothyroid issues, hypothyroidism, was with desiccated pig thyroid, also known as armor, like armor, battle armor. And desiccated pig thyroid is essentially you got to know a butcher in town or go feral hog hunting, God forbid. I don't do porcine. I don't do swine. You could probably get away with using cows, but the conversion ratios are not going to be the same. With the desiccated pig thyroid, there is actually, let me see here. I'm going to see if I can drop this into the box for you guys. Yes, I can. It's weird looking at myself in 2 screens, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to put here down below, I'm going to give you guys a link to a conversion ratio right here. Check that out. That is how you convert a particular dose of Synthroid, levothyroxine, to the appropriate corollary dosage of desiccated pig thyroid. A word about this. This is not something to take lightly. You need to see a doctor or a pharmacist about this, because if you jack up the dosages on this, you can seriously kill somebody or cause them a lot of damage. Okay. Just an FYI here, but I did want to put this out here because this is the way that people used to deal with this. So knowing a butcher or going feral hog hunting may be a decent way of doing this, although I guarantee you the supply in a long-term grid down of meat, whatever form it is going to be depleted. So an FYI, that's just one of the things that you can do here. Denise asks, how do you get armor thyroid? Yeah, it's old school, man. It's old school. Sometimes if you can find an old school doc, like a guy who's got a lot of wrinkles on his hands, they will, but it's fallen out of favor because Synthroid is considered now, I guess, a little bit more streamlined. I need my pharmacology instructor from college right here, right now. He was so brilliant. He was absolutely amazing. Yeah, good dude. So those are just some options for you guys. Now, here's the thing. With a thyroid conversion, you actually have to have a working thyroid, okay, for this to work. A thyroid that is basically sluggish, hypothyroid in that form, a sluggish thyroid, that we can work with. The problem, hardcore, comes when you don't have a thyroid and when it's been taken out for post-cancer or something like that. That's a pretty significant challenge there, man. So I hope that's helpful for you guys. Let me put it to you this way. The body was not meant to live without that organ. Okay. It's a very, very important organ. And, if you can keep it happy and healthy, that's the way to go. And one of the things that you can do, for instance, if you don't have access to, desiccated thyroid, or that's not really your thing, you can help build up the the strength, the functioning of the thyroid with bioavailable iodine. Some good sources of that would be North Atlantic kelp. High doses there, good stuff to go. Iodine nourishes the thyroid, so it's a good thing to pay attention to. But it's a common question that I get a lot. Get some more tea. Let's see. I'm going to stick to the questions that I have for today, guys. I do appreciate your excitement, though. People are like, what about this? What about this? There's only so much I can cover now because I actually do need to go to bed. I have to get up early tomorrow, and I have a heck of a headache right now. Love it. Probably a pressure system moving, and I can tell you when it's going to rain, like long before it even shows up on the radar, because I feel it. I'm like, woo, there it is. There it is. I'll give you a heads up. Colleen says, can you do a segment on autoimmune? Let me give you a huge heads up. If people have a sudden autoimmune onset, look at the gut. In general, I'm not saying this is a broad strokes things, but just because it's a pretty straightforward answer. If somebody's got a sudden autoimmune issue that crops up, look at their intestinal flora, look at the gut, look at any recent rounds of broad spectrum antibiotics. Pay attention to these things because the gut flora is where a lot of the immune challenges happen with the body. All right, onwards and upwards here. Onwards and upwards. Oh, the third point here. What made me start prepping? What made me start prepping? Whew. Boy. So, in East Tennessee, prior to the TVA, which is the Tennessee Valley Authority getting in, most of this area had very spotty, if available at all, electricity. And depending on how you count it, I'm either an 11th or 12th generation East Tennessean. And in that vein, we grew up with the knowledge and the understanding Papa and Mamaw, like Papa and Mamaw canned. So for me, what got me into prepping, that was born with it. I was born with it. And, the perspective is that, or the expectation is that every summer you are going to get your garden together. You're going to put up food. You're going to store stuff up because you just don't know what's going to be coming in the future. To East Tennessee, in the early part of the 1900s, had a large base of subsistence agriculture. And that was just the way that people lived. We've gotten a bad rap, I think, in many cases. We've been depicted as lots of different things, backwards hillbillies and this, that, and the other. And there was a special that came on, I want to say it was in the 60s. And you can probably find it on YouTube. It's called Christmas in Appalachia. P.S. The correct pronunciation is Appalachia. Appalachia. How do we know when you're not from here? When people say Appalachia. You ain't from here. Appalachia. Appalachia. So there was this special that came on in the 60s called Christmas in Appalachia. Of course, the guy who was, the main dude on camera says Christmas in Appalachia. And oh Lord, they made us look like some backwards people, some, pretty loathsome people in general. Of course, this is probably right about the time that Lyndon Baines Johnson decided to declare war on poverty and get a lot of votes that way for the Democratic Party. And listen to his own transcripts on that one. Fun. But yeah, this part of the country, we're born with it. It is who we are. The mountain people are a very unique and self-determined people. And I have this theory personally. I had a geography instructor in college who, she was a bleeding heart leftist, but she was an incredible lecturist. And I went up to her afterwards because she postulated in class. She said, you can tell a lot about people, the nature of a people, of a culture group, based on the type of land and the geography, the topography of the area where they're from, or from which, they come. And it made sense to me because people in the mountains, wherever these mountains are, like we could be even talking about the Montagnards in Vietnam. I've been there. Like those people are straight up, man. Like they don't mess around. And they helped us out and we helped them out in Vietnam. You look at the mountains of East Tennessee, you look at the mountains of Appalachia in general, West Virginia, parts of Kentucky, Virginia, North Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. Fierce people, man, fiercely independent, the spirit of the nation, man. And that's who I am. that's how I learned to do this. When it came to specifically what got me into prepping, the election really leading up to 2008, the first time, collective groan that our illustrious potentate Barack Hussein Obama was elected. Collective shudder. It's like Voldemort, he who must not be named. The first time he got in, I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong about the lack of true, legitimate, impassioned opposition leading up to the election. Yeah, Lynn Hoover's like, ugh, yeah, I know. The lack of true opposition. And I thought to myself, you know what? It's quite possible that this thing is pre-selected ahead of time, perchance, by forces that are beyond my understanding or control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to redefine what wealth truly means to me. People are like, what? Like, where does wealth enter into the equation of prepping? Let me put it to you this way. When I've sat down and thought about, okay, what is wealth truly? Like, people will spend so much time and energy and money trying to pad numbers in a bank account, man, and trying to go on vacations or buy stuff or have a bigger car or a bigger house. And I thought, wait. Okay, this all boils down to labor and what I want to do meaningfully with my labor. I thought about, okay, well, what is wealth? In the truest sense of the word, the most clearly distilled meaning for wealth. What is it? And I figured personally that my definition of wealth is my ability to maintain an expected standard of living regardless of whatever the surrounding circumstances are. I'll repeat it. My ability to maintain my standard of living regardless of the surrounding circumstances. Okay. So to me, that meant, all right, I've got to become more self-sufficient. I have to make sure that I have enough food at home, that I have enough meds to allow me to not only take care of myself, but my family. I have to make sure that I have my abilities to be physically fit, to take care of myself. I've got to make sure that that's squared away. And that's what led to prepping. The Patriot Nurse video started the videos on YouTube. Gosh, I don't know if any of y'all remember, but that was like back when I had sunglasses. The future was so bright. I have to wear shades. But I started making those videos, honestly, because I was looking for the information myself from another nurse or somebody. I thought, surely, to goodness, on that new thing called YouTube, somebody has put something up. And at that time, there wasn't really anybody who was making videos like that. And there was never, on my end, there was never this huge desire, I want to be known. I want people to recognize me. Nope. I made the video to answer questions from friends that I had, and I got tired of repeating myself. And so that's how the Patriot Nurse channel was born. That's how it came into being. And so that's where the videos came from. And it's come and grown from there. And so now I'm so blessed. I've been doing this. Gosh, wow, it's a long time, man. I've been doing this since 2009, I think. Yeah, 2008, 2009. Holy cow, 7 years. Feeling old. Yeah. But that's what got me into prepping. That's really kind of the story. There's more to it, of course, but you got to come to class to hear all that. Yep, that's what got me into prepping, man. There's a family history of it. There's a cultural familiarity with it, and there was a personal experience with it. And so that's what led me forward. Oh, yay, how exciting. You guys having a good time? You enjoying it? And Paul said, yeah, we have to wear shades. Oh, Dawn. Yay. Dawn, one of my students from California. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yay, Celeste having fun. Teresa's like, yeah. The classes, yeah, they do. The classes do feel like friends. Like, you make great friends at classes. Because if you think about it, like, who else is going to invest the time, energy, and money to come and train but people who are like-minded like you? It's like, it's a free space zone. It's your happy place. You come to class and everybody is like-minded and positive and on the same page, man. It's great. Oh, you guys are great. Yay. Garrett's like, I'm liking the live stream. Me too, man. Having a good time. The fourth question here for our event today comes from Jeremy Moosman. I hope I said that right. Number 4. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. How will medicine change in the future? Oh, how will medicine change in the future? To answer this question, I want to tell you about when my father was born in the mid-50s. Okay. So I had this conversation with Papa, and I actually think that the video is posted with Mamaw. Stephanie Miller, I'll answer that here in just a little bit. What do the classes cover? Celeste, you should see her in person. It's not an act. She really, well, nuts is relative. It's a highly fluid definition. I try and be animated, and I like to have fun with people. But yeah, I will go over that here in a minute. Stephanie, what the classes cover. In fact, I'll write it down so I don't forget. Everybody who's been to my classes, and like half the audience right now has been to my classes and my students. You guys know that short attention span sometimes. What do classes cover? I haven't forgot. I'm on my dad's birth. What do classes cover? Okay, so let's continue with Dad's birth and what this has to do with healthcare in the future. When my father was born in the 50s, okay? Oh, yay. Allie, I love you, Allie. You're awesome. When my father was born, okay, Mamaw, I believe, recounts this story on the video on the Appalachian birth story. But Papa remembers the actual numbers of how much it cost to have a baby back then. Okay. And I believe these numbers are right. I hope I'm right. But at the time of my father's birth in the 1950s in East Tennessee, it cost approximately $250 to have a baby. $250 to have a baby. Okay. I'm going somewhere with this because the question is, how will medicine change in the future? What will healthcare look like in the future? Let me predicate my answer with this story. So $250 in the mid-50s in this country in East Tennessee, which wasn't like, ooh, like a burning market or anything. $250 to have a baby. Okay. I have in front of me here a CPI inflation calculator. P.S. The CPI is an abysmal assessment of inflation. Like there's a lot missing from it. However, it's the best and quickest metric that I have here. So let's plug into the CPI inflation calculator what $250 in the particular year my father was born would come out to. Now, in 2016, $250 has the same buying power currently, listen to it, $2,243.75. $2,243.75 in today's dollars to have a baby in the mid-50s. Do you know how much it costs to have a baby in the United States now? When I worked a high-risk L&D rotation at a major hospital in the area, it was, at the time, and this was in 2007, approximately $10,000 for a non-complicated vaginal delivery and $13,000 for a C-section. I think that number has gone up. But I want you to think about that. The CPI adjusts inflation here for a birth, what it should cost, according to the CPI adjustment here, at approximately $2,500. Me and my experiences in 2007 working at that hospital, it's still $7,000. Like, it's insane. Now, I ask you, what changed? Okay. What changed in that time? I asked Papa this question. The wisdom of our elders, leading back to question number 1. I asked Papa, I said, Papa, what changed in that time? Okay. Because Papa used to sell insurance. Okay. And he remembers 2 things. First off, when insurance got involved, when you have a middleman involved, price starts going up. When the government gets involved later, of course, you've got Medicaid, Medicare, et cetera, et cetera. When the government starts getting involved, prices start going up too. And why is this? Because any time that you have a middleman or a mandated purchase or an interference in direct purchase, you cease to have a true price discovery mechanism on the market. Okay? That's right. Pete Adams, you got that right. Regulation, man. Whenever the government gets involved, all these unintended consequences show up. Oh, we thought you were going to be able to keep your doctor. Right. Your premiums won't go up. Right. Your deductibles will be manageable. Sure. There won't be any significant premium increases. Guess 67% in Aetna and East Tennessee don't count. Price discovery mechanisms are non-existent in the healthcare market. There's a lot of regulation, and I could opine about this for hours and hours and hours. But this is what I see coming in the future. The Donald has said that he wants to repeal and replace Obamacare. More power to him. However, there are certain things now that he says he wants to keep. The government is the problem. The government is the one who jacked up the market in the first place. We had people with a direct line of communication, a direct line of, hey, will you accept this? I can't afford this right now. Can I pay you this? We had a closer relationship between patient and doctor before the government decided that they want to come and help, right? So unless we have massive deregulation in the healthcare industry, because to be honest, you've heard of the military industrial complex? Oh, believe you me, there's a medical industrial complex. And don't try and rock that boat, buddy, because they will let you know that you are persona non grata, man. There's a lot of money to be made in it. There's definitely a lot of favors to be peddled, of course, from lobbyists, back and forth to Congress. And it's, Kristen has a question. Okay, Kristen has a question. Is healthcare a right or is it a privilege? Okay, well, let's ask you this. Let's go backwards even just a little bit more. What is a right? What is a right? Something that would exist in nature without the construct of a government. Do you have a right to defend yourself with or without a government being present? Yes, you do. That would exist in nature. Can you take claws out of a lion? Not without making him very, very unhappy. What would be another example of a right? The right to life. Do you have the right to live, provided that you're not hurting somebody else, of course? Do you have the right to live freely, regardless of whatever the government construct is at the time? Absolutely, you do. Do you have the right? Now, here's the question right here. Is healthcare a right or a privilege? Do you have the right to demand labor from another person? Do you? Is that not what healthcare is? Do you have the right to demand labor from another person? I'm looking at the comments. Right. People can make arguments for, food, water, shelter, etc. But I'll tell you what, healthcare is labor. And a lot of the different unions across the country, the different healthcare unions, there are many reasons why they, try and say that healthcare is a right, healthcare is right. I'm sorry, but no one is entitled to my labor by virtue of their existence. And think about it this way. If you're a mechanic, for instance, does somebody have the right to automotive care? Absolutely no, they don't. Do they have the right to make you effectively a servant for them? No, I don't think so. So I think what you're going to see here in the future, and if you disagree with me, that's fine. My next question is, okay, like, who else's labor? Do I have a right to your labor? Like, oh, healthcare is my right. Like, really? Okay, so do I have the right to tell you to work for me? And is it a civil rights violation if I don't want to work for you? Woo! Patriot nurse! Whoa. Medicare in the future, I think, is going to be, unless the Donald is able to follow through on, what he said, it's going to be more regulated. It's going to be more expensive. Probably less access in general. There are not only economic issues in play, but there are demographic issues in play as well. Not only is healthcare more expensive for many different reasons. I mean, we have had advances in technology, etc. But the government getting involved is not going to help anything. It's only going to jack up the system more, I would submit. But it's more than just economics. We have more people that are going to be in need of healthcare in the future. More need of healthcare in the future. We have an aging population, and in many cases, the population is not, it's shrinking, right? In certain places. I can't remember the last time I checked. I'd have to look at the census website. But there are going to be more people that are demanding, they're putting increasing demand on the system as it is. And right now, the incentives for healthcare are not really there. I had an aunt who, unfortunately, God rest her, she passed away, may her memory be blessed. And she told me years and years ago, she straight up told me when she found out I was in nursing, she said, do not go into nursing. I'm like, why? I want to help people. I want to be a good person. I'm good at science. She's like, listen, like, it's only going to get worse from here. She's like, the pinnacle of healthcare is long gone. Like, it's over. And I was, really? I think it's going to get worse, folks, in the future. And I think that the need for self-sufficiency is really going to be there. Really going to be there. Next one, stitching wounds. Somebody had a question here. What about government-funded research? I don't know. I'm not really a fan of the federal government in general. I'll just put it that way. And I'm really not a fan of tax dollars going to anything other than defense and roads in general. That's, it's part of the, people complain, oh, big pharma. Well, why do you think that we are in half the trouble that we are? It's that you have government that is subsidizing. Actually, government doesn't have any money of its own. So let's rephrase it this way. What about government funded research? Government doesn't have money of its own. It's taxpayer funded research. And at what point does it become destructive? And why should the taxpayer, why should I, at the point of incarceration, be forced to pay for research that I may or may not use? I mean, freedom, y'all, and feel free to disagree, but I'm all about limiting the size of government. Government has not helped stuff, people. It gets in your life, it gets in your way to the point now where we even have to worry what we say on our freaking phones. Okay, less government, less. Make it go away. Patriot nurse. Woohoo. Next. How will? Oh, I already did that one. John Barrett asks, stitching wounds. How do we stitch wounds and how do we close wounds? Oh, who's been in my class? Raise your hand. Friends, stitching wounds and internal wound closure is way overrated. Way overrated. Okay. Anytime, just by virtue of doing what you're doing, by piercing down into unaffected tissue, you're introducing a certain risk for infection there. And in fact, there are certain types of wounds that do need to be more complicatedly, closed internally. But for the most part, if you're dealing with surface level scratches and stuff like that, external wound closure is better. We do go over this in class. I think a lot of the fascination with stitches and suturing is that it's glitzy, it's sexy, it's flashy, and it makes people feel Tim Underbakes. Yeah, all right, Shelby's there. Yay, Tim and Shelby. How awesome. Shelby from New Hampshire. Party on, Shelby. Oh, man. But I think a lot of the fascination with stitching and with closing wounds, etc., comes from the fact that it makes people feel powerful, right? But that isn't necessarily the thing to really focus on. I think there are ways to close wounds, but if you're interested in learning more about them, because guys, people don't know what they don't know, without trying to sound like an arrogant butthead. People don't know what they don't know. There are different knots. There are different needles for different applications. There are different, I said knots. There are different suture materials. Like you've got silk, you got chrome gut, you got Vicryl. There's lots of different things. Get this book. I'm going to drop a link here in the description box. Let me grab it. See, I pre-gamed ahead of time, y'all, just because I care. Patriot Nurse loves us. Yeah, I do. All right, let's put her down there. All right, it's the Ethicon. There we go, the wound closure manual. That's your friend, y'all. And the wound closure manual goes over the different components, of course, of a needle. And let's look at what else here. Placement of sutures around a drain and things like that. Folks, if you tie these things wrong, you can infect somebody and give them cellulitis at best. At worst, you could cause significant complications of the wound, leading to tunneling wounds and giving the person sepsis and killing them. So it's not something to screw around with. It really isn't. I'm a big fan of external wound closures. Butterflies are part of that equation. But we do go over this in class. There are certain criteria that must be met if you are externally closing a wound, right? Let's see what else here. The last question of our chat this evening. Oh my gosh, boy, time flies. For those of you who've been in my class, you know I can just sit there and chat it up the whole day, right? The sixth question here comes from Ed Ward, who I believe, there he is! Ed's there! Yay! I'm going to answer your question, Ed. Post-Trump, now what? Dun dun dun. Post-Trump, now what? Oh God. Who here saw my last video on the anti-Trump protesters? Raise your hand. Yeah. So the last video, of course, that I published on YouTube was relating to not only the turmoil as a result of Trump winning, and the left decided that they want to throw a hissy fit and, you know, do their thing, of course. I want to read you something. If I can find it. I love misplacing stuff. Here it is. I want to read you something. Wiser men than I. Of course, I'm not a man. No, I'm not. Contrary to what the internet conspiracy theorists probably say. This is the Anti-Federalist Papers, and this particular segment that I'm going to read to you, and I hope that you savor this wisdom, friends. The Federal Farmer, October 8th and 9th, 1787. This is the Federal Farmer is most likely Richard Henry Lee of Virginia. Okay. In 1787, these very wise men were having pretty significant discussions about the future of the republic. We are a republic. Yay for the republic. We're not a democracy. We are a republic. In the words of Richard Henry Lee, most likely the Federal Farmer, October 8th and 9th, 1787, discussing the types of governments that would potentially be put in place. Under this federal modification of government, the powers of Congress would be rather advisory or recommendatory than coercive. We may do away the several state governments and form or consolidate all the states into one entire government. He was voicing a concern at this point that the states and the state governments would effectively become unimportant, obsolete. That's the word I'm looking for. And that the federal government would effectively consolidate the power and siphon the power away from the states. And we definitely saw that in 1865 with the war between the states. But we're seeing it making a second iteration right now as well. I want to continue on a couple of points here, because I think if you want to know what's next, it's already been foretold. Okay. I want you to listen to these very, very wise sayings here. Independent of the opinions of many great authors, that a free elective government cannot be extended over large territories, a few reflections must evince that one government and general legislation alone never can extend equal benefits to all parts of the United States. Different laws, different customs, and opinions exist in the different states, which by a uniform system of laws would be unreasonably invaded. Let me paraphrase that. If I may take the liberty to paraphrase a very great man. Let me ask you a question. Actually, I will paraphrase him by asking you a question. Does California have the same culture and expectations as that of Wyoming or North Dakota? Nope. Let me put it a different way. What does a 22-year-old millennial in New York City who has never driven a car but has only ridden the subway have in common with me as an East Tennessee woman living in the mountains? Maybe a language. Definitely not a worldview for sure. I'm generalizing here. Like, I do understand that there are very intelligent people in this audience, and I'm very blessed with that. But to drive home their points here, these guys were very smart, and they knew from a long, long time ago that this place was going to be enormous, and that there are different groups of people that are settling in these different areas at the time, and that the cultures would evolve not necessarily on parallel lines, but on diversionary lines. And if that's the case, then how is it that all of their rights can be uniformly protected? And how is it the case that their opinions can be represented and not squashed in a large, centralized, unified government? And you're seeing this play out in North Carolina with the bathroom laws. You're seeing this play out in California with the gun laws. You're seeing this play out definitely along abortion, the abortion debates state by state. You're seeing very clearly divided cultures and perspectives in each of these states, okay, and sub-regions as well. I want to read you a second portion here that I starred, and this will be the last excerpt that I read here for you guys. Richard Henry Lee, most likely, of course. There is more reason to believe that the general government, far removed from the people, keep in mind the election results from D.C., there is more reason to believe that the general government, far removed from the people, and none of its members elected oftener than once in 2 years, will be forgot or neglected, and its laws in many cases disregarded, unless a multitude of officers and military force be continually kept in view, and employed to enforce the execution of the laws, and to make the government feared and respected. No position can be truer than this, that in this country, either neglected laws or a military execution of them must lead to a revolution and to the destruction of freedom. Neglected laws must first lead to anarchy and confusion, and a military execution of laws is only a shorter way to the same point: despotic government. Very, very wise men. So, to answer your question, Ed, post-Trump, now what? I think they told you. The states, I submit, the states are going to have to reassert themselves. Hopefully, the election of an outsider has bought us, in my opinion, hopefully, I'm hoping at this point, I'm not definitively saying or categorically ascribing this is going to happen. Hopefully, an outsider being elected has bought us a little bit of time, a little bit of breath. But I think the Convention of States is going to have to happen. And Governor Greg Abbott of Texas has got some great things organized with the Convention of States. But the powers of the federal government are going to have to be restricted, or they are going to strangle the people in the states. And the most peaceful way to do that is with the Convention of States. The founders understood this, and they gave us a legal framework from which to work. And you're seeing how the corruption, even in the Obama administration in recent time, you're seeing how the corruption in the executive branch and in the federal government has a way of infecting the states. And definitely in the case of the North Carolina issue with the bathrooms, the federal government has become belligerent to the states. And I hope that ceases. I really do. But I'm not, even if we have 4 years with President-elect Trump, that we have a chance to catch our breath. There's nothing saying that 4 years later, or even 8 years later, that we're not going to be right back where we started from. I hope not, for the sake of good people here, of course. But I look at what the Anti-Federalists said, because they were wise men. And they understood not only human nature, but they understood human history and governmental history. And they knew the pattern and the shelf life of governments. They knew a lot. So that's what I think we can expect, what they said. So friends, the last question that I want to cover here is, what do the classes cover. And the classes actually have a lot of students here, a lot of students in the audience, which I'm so excited about. There are 334 people right now. That's awesome. So excited. The classes cover, folks, many different things. The medical prep classes, the medical prep 101 and 201. We cover respiratory diseases, digestive diseases, and wound care. We also cover camp considerations, how to set up your camp, things to be concerned with as far as waterborne diseases, foodborne diseases, etc. How to take care of wounds, of course, how to take care of digestive diseases, how to rehydrate people, how to fend off pneumonia, how to deal with these respiratory diseases when they come, right? That's huge. Because let's face it, folks, like most people in the world that die, they die from non-traumatic injuries, okay? And even in a poop hits the fan scenario, like just look at what happened in Rwanda, for instance, like with all that ethnic cleansing that was happening, all this terrible things that were happening to those poor people there. People were still dying from infectious diseases in these refugee camps, guys, from many, different points here. People cloistered together spread disease, but also sanitation issues are a huge part of that as well. The second day, of course, with Medical Prep 201, we go over how to assess people, because it is so important to understand what you're looking at here, but also how to make sense of, hey, I gave this person more to drink. Shouldn't their blood pressure be changing at this point? Shouldn't it be coming down? Why is it so high right now? Like they've retched their guts out. They've lost a lot of fluid from diarrhea. How do I assess and see if what I'm doing is working, or if I need to do something else, or if I need somebody to help me because I'm tapped out as far as my knowledge base is concerned? That's a huge part of it. We also cover psychological considerations, PTSD, sexual abuse, trauma. We cover in a decent amount of detail pain and what to do with pain, chronic pain, when you don't have your meds anymore. And that's an important thing to cover also. We cover in 301, which is going to be coming out in March. In 301, it's called, oh, sorry, I'm so tired. Let's see, herbs, nutrition, herbs, and old school disease. I'm sorry, guys. Jeez, like that headache. I'm performing really well with my headache here, but yeah, I'm going to be like taking a shower and calming down after this. But yeah, herbs, nutrition, herbs, and old school disease. This is 301. That's a 2-day class, right? And, in nutrition, herbs, and old school disease, the first day is going to be nutrition and what are the things that people store when they're storing long-term survival foods, and what are the gaps in that, right? Because the number one mistake that people make over and over again is that they store calories rather than nutrition. And you need both in order to work and to have enough energy, not only to do your activities of daily living, but also to be able to keep your defenses up against nasty diseases. So that's part one. The second day is herbs and old school diseases. So we're going to talk about the old ways that people used to treat things like smallpox and diphtheria and typhoid, the things that have vanished now, but they will show up in quick order in a prolonged grid down event. And that's what we're going to cover, of course. So my friends, I want to thank you so much. We've had a wonderful hour here with our live feed. I really hope y'all enjoyed that you should make DVDs. Sarah, yeah, people rip them off though. Like I had a friend who did, he made, it was some sort of survival thing. I'm sorry, I'm starting to fade. We'll be tapping out here in a minute. But yeah, I had a friend and he made a DVD basically for sale to the mass market. And it literally, there was a copy that was leaked on the internet prior to it even being released. So that just goes to show, man, I'd rather, if I'm going to do stuff, that's going to be out in internet form, I'd just rather be out there, for free for people. Just like what I'm doing now, the ways that I interact with people in a teaching situation best are in class. And it's really important to me to be able to maintain that because for those of my students, I think I've got at least 5 of them in here right now. For those of my students who've been to class, you can attest that it's such a hands-on dynamic. Like you really do need to be able to, I need to be able to come there next to you and be like, okay, wait a minute, do it this way. I need to be able to be right there with you for that. So, but yes, I've had such a great time with you guys. I just want to thank you all so much again. Pete Adams, get some sleep. We need you healthy. Yes, I need me healthy too, Pete. Thank you. Celeste, yay. Mary Alice, thank you so much. And then Deb, awesome. William, Shannon, everybody's doing great. Thank you so much. I really just appreciate that y'all are here. And if you haven't made it out to class, please do. Let me tell you where I'm actually going to be this year. Let me pull that up here on the website right quick. I'm going to be in Jacksonville, Florida, and Deborah is going to be in that class. Woohoo! I'm going to be in Jacksonville, Florida next month. That is December 3, 4. I'm going to be at Valor Ridge, of course, Harrogate, Tennessee, December 12 and 13. That's actually, I think it's a Monday, Tuesday class. So if weekends aren't your thing and you are wanting to get some training, that's a really good time to do it. I'm going to be teaching a 4-day block, of course, with Medical Prep 101, 201, and 301 in March at Knoxville, Richmond, Virginia, Spokane, Washington, Atlanta, Houston, Indianapolis, Exeter, New Hampshire. Woot! Shelby, you better come back for that. Knoxville, of course, again, and then Reno, Nevada for all of y'all who are trapped behind enemy lines in California. But yeah, Tamara, come to Fairbanks, Alaska. Pal, that's a long flight. That's a long flight. Lord. Well, y'all, I just want to thank you guys so much. And I hope y'all have a wonderful week. And I hope you're blessed very much. I'm so grateful for everybody being here. And thanks. Okay. Good night, y'all.